You're fighting on the Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria card. Charles is a big underdog. How do you see that fight going?
Man, that's a tougher matchup that a lot of people think. They think Topuria gonna run through Charles. You never count Charles Oliveira out. I think he's very tough. But Topuria is good, you know? He's 145. It's going to be a tough fight for both fighters. I don't have one opinion on that. I was leaning more to Topuria, but today I just had a podcast with Charles.
Minus 370 favorite Topuria is to beat Charles Bronx Oliveira.
What?
Minus 370.
That is insane. That is not right.
To beat a...
That's an amazing fight. Who you picking that one?
I think Ilia smokes him, bro.
He smokes?
He smokes him.
I don't think so.
It's a very bad matchup.
I think he's a way closer fight than you think. Why?
The odds makers have Ilia as...
Who is the odds maker, bro? Tell me your name. Who are these guys? Odds maker. Who's these guys, bro?
Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a major moment in MMA. Now let's get straight into it. Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira is heating up fast, and some of the biggest names in the game have spoken. Gilbert Burns recently dropped some sharp takes on the upcoming showdown between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira. He broke down Charles's style, pointing out how his aggressive mix of striking and grappling often leaves him open during tight exchanges. According to Burns, Oliveira's approach in the clinch can backfire, especially against opponents who throw slicing elbows and sharp knees. Burns also mentioned that Oliveira's upright stance and wild trading habits could get him caught with counterhooks. As a seasoned grappler with crisp striking, Gilbert knows the risks and stressed the importance of tight defense against a guy like Topuria, who's looking to exploit every slip.
Let me ask you this, though.
Yeah.
What's Charles Oliveira's weakness?
Charles Oliveira weakness.
Burns also touched on how personal the matchup is for him. He's close with both fighters and refused to take sides, but he emphasized one thing. People thinking this is one-sided are wrong. In his view, both men bring elite skills to the table. It's not about picking a favorite. It's about realizing this fight could swing off the smallest moments. That's what makes it dangerous.
So you're picking Charles?
He's a close fight than people think. Both are my guys, you know, so it's kind of suck for me to pick a side, but I'm just saying that he's a way closer fight than people think.
Then you've got Mateusz Gamrot, and he's all in on Oliveira. He predicted a KO win for the former champ at UFC 317. Gamrot admitted that Topuria's power is serious, and he's got the kind of hands that can end things quick. But he pointed to the size difference, and Oliveira's overall experience is key. Charles has fought at the top for years, and Gamrot believes his reach, striking, and resume give him the edge. He doesn't think it'll go the distance. In his eyes, Oliveira finishes it early.
Fair enough. Who do you think wins, Ilia or Charles?
Interesting matchup. The both guys has changed. Like if Ilia hit Charles Oliveira head, so he can knock him down for sure. But I think Oliveira is so big for him and for all-rounder fighter, and I think Oliveira will win this fight.
Gamrot didn't stop there. He made it clear the fight's competitive. He just slightly leans toward Charles. He said Topuria's got that one-shot danger, no question. But he also highlighted Oliveira's experience, size, and especially his grappling. If the fight goes to the ground, Gamrot thinks Oliveira's jiu-jitsu will be a serious problem for Ilia. He added that Oliveira's unpredictability can be risky, but it might actually work in his favor. That wildness, combined with his ground game, could seal it.
Wow, you think Oliveira's gonna win? I haven't heard a lot of people say that.
I think so. He is big. It depends how his performance will be in the fight, because sometimes he looks bad, but sometimes he looks fantastic. So I think that in the ground he will be much better for Ilia, especially like the gabarit is much different. Oliveira is big guy, Ilia is small guy. So if Oliveira catch him in the ground, I think this is gonna be big problem. But like I say, Ilia can knock him out for him also, you know. So this is like 50-50, but I think Oliveira will win.
Renato Moicano also gave his thoughts, and he disagreed with the idea that Topuria will have an easy time. Moicano said people are underestimating Oliveira's durability and danger. He acknowledged that Topuria is moving up from featherweight, and that alone creates new problems for both men. While he was initially siding with Ilia, Moicano admitted that after a chat with Charles on his podcast, he felt more connected. And in the end, he's rolling with his fellow Brazilian, not just because of skills, but because of pride.
You're fighting on the Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria card. Charles is a big underdog. How do you see that fight going?
Man, that's a tougher matchup that a lot of people think. They think Topuria gonna run through Charles. You never count Charles Oliveira out. I think he's very tough. But Topuria is good, you know? He's 145. It's going to be a tough fight for both fighters. I don't have an opinion on that. I was leaning more to Topuria, but today I just had a podcast with Charles on my Brazilian channel. It's just very hard to not like the guy. That makes harder, you know, to pick against him. So I'm going with Charles just because he's Brazilian.
Meanwhile, Gilbert Burns was debating the matchup live when his co-host Matty Betts confidently claimed Ilia would smoke Oliveira. Burns didn't hold back. He pushed back hard, saying it's nowhere near that simple. He gave Oliveira more respect and said the fight's closer than people think.
That's an amazing fight. Who you picking that one?
I think Ilia smokes him, bro.
He smokes?
Think he
No,
smokes
I
him.
don't think so, bro.
In that same convo, when Matty brought up the betting lines showing Ilia as the clear favorite, Gilbert called out the odds makers. He even joked about who these guys are. Some faceless crew in the back just throwing out numbers. He said they get it wrong all the time. Matty admitted they do make mistakes, but also defended their track record. It was a solid back and forth.
I think that it's a very bad matchup.
I think he's a way closer fight than you think. Why?
The odds makers have Ilia as...
Who is the odds maker, bro? Tell me your name. Who are these guys? Odds maker. Who's these guys, bro? Who's these guys?
These guys are the shadows behind the
These
counter.
guys made so many mistakes.
Of course they make mistakes, but like
So
they're
many.
also right a lot too.
Chael Sonnen also chimed in, saying he was surprised that Topuria is the favorite in his lightweight debut. Chael couldn't believe that someone like Oliveira, a former champion with multiple title defenses and the UFC record for most submissions, is being seen as an underdog. He said Oliveira's legacy deserves a lot more respect.
Minus 370 favorite Topuria is to beat Charles Du Bronx Oliveira.
What?
Minus 370.
That is insane. That is not right.
To be the world champion that defended 3 times, has more submissions than anyone in UFC history, and he's a minus 370 favorite.
Khamzat Chimaev had a different angle. He talked about Ilia's rise in their training days back at All Stars Gym. Even before Ilia became a household name, Khamzat saw the talent. They were both grinding in Brave FC at the time, and Khamzat said Ilia already had the focus, work ethic, and mindset to make it big. Watching him now, Khamzat said it's no surprise. It's the result of years of work.
Очень известный сейчас боец. Ты с ним вроде как давно знаком. Он тренировался в Альстаре вместе, вот до еще его всей известности. Когда вот тренировки, ты его видел? Ты видел этот потенциал в будущем?
Ну, конечно, просто тогда, в то время, этот был он хорошим топовым бойцом в Брейве, и как и я, мы оба там выступали. Видно было, потому что он такой пахарь и хочет добиться чего-то в своей жизни. И парень добился всех высот, которые можно в этом спорте добиться.
Burns also brought up that Ilia facing Oliveira is a better stylistic fit than taking on Islam Makhachev. He pointed out how Charles was banged up before the Islam fight and took it anyway in Abu Dhabi under pressure. That's why Gilbert still wants a healthy Oliveira versus Islam rematch. He explained that Islam and Ilia offer 2 very different problems. Islam's a suffocating grappler, while Ilia is more of a slick boxer with some ground skills, but no real kicking game. It's a totally different threat.
It's a better matchup for Ilia than Islam, obviously.
For Charles?
No, I'm saying like Ilia, like obviously Ilia fighting Charles is a better matchup for him than fighting than Islam.
I heard so many things that Charlie was very hurt on that first fight, but he had to take the fight in Abu Dhabi. He tried to pull out the UFC kind of pressure him to get the fight. I gotta see that rematch, you know. I gotta see. Let's see. This guy 100% what he's gonna do against Islam, but it's a very different matchup. One guy's a boxer, the other one he's a high level grappler. But so Topuria is still a good grappler, but no kicks, no. It's different, very different matchup.
Paddy Pimblett also threw in his take. He thinks Topuria could get the win, but he's not sold on Oliveira's chin holding up. Paddy pointed out that Charles has been in nearly 40 fights and taken a lot of damage. He also said Charles takes big risks, and against a sharp hitter like Ilia, that could end badly. Paddy spoke on the weight jump too, saying people underestimate what that really means. He mentioned that Oliveira has a similar frame to his own, and said size could be a big factor, especially in a striking battle.
Ilia beats Charles then?
I think he might, to be honest. Charles is a bit chinny, isn't he? You know what I mean? He's had about 40 fights or something. He always gets punched. He always gets cracked.
Yeah.
So,
he's reckless, but he's super exciting.
Yeah, he is.
And he's dangerous.
Exciting. If he gets him down, I can see him winning, because that 10 pounds difference is a big difference.
Yeah.
145 to 155, it's a big difference. People don't understand that because they don't watch the sport or they're not involved in the sport. But that 10 pounds makes a big difference. And especially, like, Charles is like my height. Ilia's like down here when I stand up, you know what I mean? So it's gonna make a big difference. Like,
Paddy followed that up by saying Ilia might be shocked when he sees Charles in person. He talked about how fighters moving up often think they know what to expect, until they're staring down someone who's been at that weight for years. He mentioned guys like Bobby Green and Chandler, who looked huge on paper but didn't feel that way in the cage. That kind of unexpected size can change things fast.
Ilia might get a bit of a fright at how big Charles is when he stands opposite him. Fighters do that with me, who fight at lightweight. You know what I mean? I'll never forget Bobby Green looking over at me and being like, "What? He's big, him." Same with Chandler. Like people thought Chandler was going to be bigger than me, and he just weren't.
Michael Bisping broke it all down too. He said Oliveira's style is aggressive and constant, always pressing, always looking for subs. But he also mentioned that it's Ilia's debut at lightweight, and that brings uncertainty. He praised Topuria's hands, his forward pressure, and his Greco-Roman wrestling, and said it wouldn't shock him if Ilia pulled it off.
Ilia versus Charles du Bronx Oliveira. We know Charles, he's a dangerous, aggressive son of a bitch. He's gonna walk forward, punch his knees, elbows, he'll lock on a submission. Ilia, this is his first fight at lightweight, and with the punching power of Ilia Topuria, the boxing that he has, the footwork that he has, and the Greco-Roman wrestling, it wouldn't surprise me if Ilia pulls it off.
Bisping later praised Ilia's whole run, especially how he talks a big game and then goes out and proves it. He said Topuria's been finishing fights while barely getting touched, and that a win over Oliveira would be massive for him. Based on how sharp he's looked, Bisping said it makes sense if the odds lean toward Ilia.
I would say Ilia Topuria, given everything that he's done in the sport, the confidence that he's shown, the manifestation, the kids say, but bringing it all to a reality, knocking out everyone in his way, doing it in absolute style, hardly breaking a sweat, not having to fight through any adversity, not being the hammer and the nail. He's just been the hammer, just hammering his way through everyone. If he beats Charles Oliveira, which I would assume that he's going to be the favourite to do, and that's with absolutely no disrespect towards Charles Oliveira.
Javier Mendez also leaned toward Topuria. He said Ilia's boxing in tight spaces is dangerous, and that Charles's upright stance might cost him, especially if he can't time his kicks and knees to keep Ilia at range. While Oliveira has the longer limbs and more dynamic kicks, Mendez feels Ilia is more complete and more likely to win.
You would pick Ilia over Charles. What is it about his skill set that you like more?
It's basically because Charles is going to stand in there upright, like you're saying, and when he gets inside, he's going to use that boxing, and Charles' head's going to be up, and Ilia's got a really good way of connecting with that chin on the inside. Really, really nice, just like what he did with Volk, you know. And I think if Charles doesn't get him up the middle with knees or front kicks up the middle, he's going to have a hard time with his boxing against him, and he's going to have a hell of a time trying to take him down. So it's going to be one of those where Ilia's got more opportunities than Charles does. But Charles can surprise us with his length, you know, and up the middle would be really, really well suited for him. And the kicks too, you know, body, head type thing, you know, low, high, you know, he could do really well with that.
Then Robert Whittaker spoke on how exciting the lightweight division has become now that Ilia's involved. He said the UFC apparently promised Ilia a title shot if he gave up his featherweight belt. Robert believes when a champ moves up, they deserve a top-tier test right away, even if that bumps others down the ladder. He finished by saying that, at the end of the day, the UFC will pick the fight that makes the most money.
I think the lightweight division is the most exciting division right now. It's just death row in the lightweight division at the moment. Like the top 5, dude, that guard up there right now, it's just killers, man.
But especially with Ilia Topuria entering the mix, right? The whole big story over the past week was he obviously vacated the title at featherweight, but apparently he said the UFC told him, "We promise you a title opportunity if you vacate." That's what he told Spanish media. Or I think he said as a backup he would fight Charles Oliveira. And now they've gone back and forth. What do you reckon, Rob?
I don't know what was promised or anything, but I feel like if you're you're in a lower division and you vacate the title, you should go straight to the top of the pecking order. I'd like to see him go straight into a title shot. Okay. Understandably, it can be tricky that way because there are a lot of guys, like, styles make fights. So if the champion of a lighter division has a better style to beat the guy in the high division, where's the fairness of that? Because that guy may not get through 10 guys to get to a title shot. He may not get through the contenders. Yeah, I just feel like there should be a certain amount of weight for being the champion of the division already. I can also see the side of the argument for the guys in the division that have been like, brother, like, I've had to slog, especially in the lightweight division, like, I've had to slog my way to the top of this division, and it is death row there. I think UFC's going to do what makes them the most money.
Both MMA Guru and Demetrious Johnson gave their thoughts as well. Guru called it a huge PPV-worthy matchup, even if there's no title on the line. But he did question how Topuria will handle the weight jump to 155. Demetrious Johnson said Ilia's already a big guy. He walks around at nearly 191 pounds, so the move up makes sense. He was surprised Ilia even stayed at featherweight this long. For him, seeing fighters push into higher weight classes is always exciting.
If Ilia Topuria fights Charles Oliveira on a pay-per-view, that's a big deal.
Oh, it's going to be bigger.
They don't need to wait for an interim belt. They don't need to wait for an undisputed. So, yeah. I don't know how he's going to do it lightweight, though. Maybe you can speak on that. He's a smaller guy coming up.
It's a smaller coming up. It'll be interesting because he is bigger from when I heard him on the Joe Rogan podcast. Like 191, I think he was walking around. It's massive. So for him to cut to 145 seems almost like, how did he do that? But now that he's going up to 155, I always like when athletes go up.
Now it's your turn. What do you think of this matchup? Does Oliveira's experience outshine Topuria's rise? Or will Ilia make a statement in his lightweight debut? Drop your predictions in the comments. And if you enjoyed the breakdown, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more.